Over the years, we have had quite a few multi-Doctor stories at this point, whether it's for anniversaries, whether it's just for the fun of it, whatever. We've had quite a few, and I thought I would pose the question of which one actually is the best one. Now the thing is, the answer is of course going to be different depending on who you are. It depends what you want in a story, it depends what the plot does for you, it depends if you like the overindulgent side of things, or it depends on which Doctors are in it. So there's no like right or wrong answer to this. Like in your head you'll probably go into this video thinking, well, I think it's this one, and yeah, you are totally right, that is your opinion. This video is going to be me looking at the different anniversary stories, what I personally think of each one of them, and then coming to the decision of which one I think is probably my favourite. In fact, going into this video, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe by the time this video wraps up, maybe, hopefully, I'll have actually decided which one I think. So we need to look no further than back in the early 1970s for the 10th anniversary special known as The Three Doctors. Now this one, I mean, I really like this one for what it is. I think it is a load of fun. I think Jon Pertwee and Patrick Troughton are clearly having a blast. William Hartnell does sadly make his final appearance in this story. He doesn't do too much, he's obviously just like on a monitor, which is unfortunate, but given his health at the time, you understand why. And yes, this story is a bit goofy, it is a bit wacky, it is almost a bit of a generic Pertwee story. Like in terms of the plot, it's probably not the best one. But I think Troughton and Pertwee are the things that carry this, if I'm being totally honest. I really love their chemistry together, the way that they bounce off of each other, their banter with each other, everything like that. It really, really makes this such an enjoyable story to watch. And I think that's crucial with anything. If your leads are clearly having fun, and clearly you know, clicking, and you see a new side to them, it's just going to be enjoyable and it will lift up any iffy plot moments. I have a special place in my heart for this one. This was the first Pertwee story that I saw, technically the first Patrick Troughton story that I saw as well, and it is just a really, really fun, enjoyable ride. Like I say, I think if you think about this one too much, you can start picking holes in it and you can start saying, well, that doesn't quite work, that's a bit stupid, that's a bit daft, like why is that character behaving that way? The Brigadier, for example, I think he's a bit off in this story in terms of his characterization. But either way, it's amazing seeing Patrick, Jon Pertwee, and of course, briefly, William Hartnell all together. Next, we of course come to the Five Doctors, which was the 20th anniversary special. And if I remember rightly, this is like the first story that is a specific special. It's not just like part of a series. I mean, yes, it is technically part of season 20, but it's like its own thing. The Five Doctors is a strange one for me because I appreciate what this does, but I do have my issues with it. That, I mean, some of them are bullshit, which I'll get to in a sec, but some of them just kind of really irk me with this story. So the first one that I have, so I was quite a naive child. If I saw something, I was like, right, well, that's got to be the case then, hasn't it? So for example, I got the very first release of the Five Doctors on DVD. I think it was first released in like 99. I obviously didn't buy it then because I was 4. I remember getting that DVD and it was a really, really pretty drawn art cover. And you've got the Five Doctors there. So it would have been Richard Hurdnall, Patrick Troughton, Jon Pertwee, Tom Baker and Peter Davison. I, of course, at the time had no idea about Shada. I didn't realise that it was this missing story. So when the episode is happening, you obviously get introduced to each of the Doctors, and then it came to Tom, and me not knowing anything differently, saw him punting, him and Romana down the river, and I was like, oh cool, this is a fun little scene. I'm really curious to see how he's going to get on with... Oh, what do you mean he's stuck in the vortex? And as Tom is my favourite Doctor, obviously that really pissed me off. So I think the first time I watched it, I was a bit fuming at that. But outside circumstances, you can't really change that. Tom felt that he didn't want to come back, for maybe it was too soon, whatever, you know, whatever reason, it's fair enough. William Hartnell has obviously sadly passed away, so they had to recast him. And so in a way, it's advertised as the Five Doctors, but it's technically the Three Doctors and a fake Doctor in a way, even though he does a fine job, I guess. And then Tom's just sort of in the background. From a fan perspective, that is a bit disappointing, but I think for me the biggest problem that I have with the Five Doctors is that they're not together. They don't really do enough. One of the things that I just mentioned then about the Three Doctors is the chemistry between Patrick Troughton and Jon Pertwee. It really bolsters that story, whereas with this, for the majority of the story, they're all separate, they're all doing their own thing, and there's weird pairings going on as well, like Troughton with the Brigadier. Yes, it does kind of work, but it doesn't feel quite right. Sarah Jane with Pertwee, again, doesn't feel totally right. Susan's obviously back. There's a whole host of cameos. There's a whole host of like different appearances from villains and monsters from down the years, such as the Yeti. The Daleks obviously get a brief appearance. You know, the Time Lords are in this, the Cybermen, the Master. Like, in terms of Doctor Who stuff, this is full of it, but I feel like it is a missed opportunity in the sense of I really wanted to see the Doctors together more, and it does feel like by the time they do come together, it's a little bit too late, and it's like, we've saved the day now. However, for what it is, again, it's also very enjoyable. Then, weirdly, not for an anniversary, we have the 2 Doctors. This time, again, featuring Patrick Troughton. These are all just additional Troughton stories, aren't they, really? And of course, Colin Baker. Now, this one, for me, I think is massively underrated. I love the 2 Doctors. I think it's one of Robert Holmes' best scripts, if I'm being totally honest. I actually really like it from start to finish. It is a little bit long, I will say that, because it is a 3-part story. And I think certain things aren't handled quite well. I feel like the Sontarans are a bit pointless in this story. I like them, but they are a bit pointless. But I love how dark this story is, and it's part of the reason why I love season 22 as much as I do. Like, I love that brutal side to Doctor Who, and I love that dark edge that we got in this season. I think it really works, particularly for Colin's Doctor as well. I love the location work in this. I love the performances. I love the fact that Jacqueline Pearce is in this as well, you know, from Blake 7. There's a few time things that I don't quite like, in a way. That's going to sound weird. Okay, what I mean is, there's a moment towards the end where the 6th Doctor turns to the 2nd Doctor, is like, oh, you've got one of them, I always wanted one of them, and it's like, you have had one of them, you were him. But I really like Fraser Hines in this story as well, actually, and I like his dynamic with Colin Baker. The set design is actually pretty good in this one as well. I believe it was filmed above Top of the Pops for part of it, so that's quite fun. The Doctors aren't together all that much in this story, which I think works better here because there's only 2 Doctors. I feel like with the 5 Doctors, there's too many other strands happening, whereas with this, it's like, okay, so there's just 1 Doctor here, 1 Doctor there, and then their paths will eventually cross. Shockeye is such a brutal character as well, and to be fair, listen, I'm not a vegetarian, I'm not a vegan, but this story obviously has a sort of anti-meat eater message behind it and how brutal it actually can be, which I don't mind. Like, I actually think it is very well done. Turning the 2nd Doctor into a villain, though, I kind of like it, but I don't know. Either way, I do like this one. Very enjoyable, but noticeably darker. Now, some of you were thinking, of course he's going to mention Dimensions in Time, and I am. It's shit. Anyway, moving on to Day of the Doctor. Day of the Doctor is a guilty pleasure for me. I did a review recently, and I think that this story doesn't really celebrate 50 years of Doctor Who. It celebrates the previous 8 years of the modern era with a couple of classic references splashed in here and there. Depending on who you are, that either is fine or it's really, really annoying. For me personally, it's fine. I can live with it. Again, one thing that I love about Day of the Doctors are actually in this story and interact with each other. I love the chemistry that David Tennant, Matt Smith and John Hurt all have. Their dynamic works so well, and listen, it's never going to be Pertwee and Troughton, like, ever, but it's not that far behind. I think what this story offers, I mean, there's certain moments that I think are stupid in terms of the canon stuff. There's certain moments where I'm like, really? Did we need to have the whole weird Queen Elizabeth Zygon romance thing? But I think this is the type of story that you want for an anniversary special that is going to be pure fan service, in the sense of it grabs you. So even though that there are these moments where you're like, Jesus Christ, why have they done that? Whilst you're watching, you don't really care because you are so hooked into the story. It's one of them where you massively enjoy it whilst watching it, but it's only after the fact that you start to think about little bits here and there and you start to nitpick and think, actually that didn't quite work, that didn't quite work. But that's just what we do as Doctor Who fans. For me, Day of the Doctor, I was so excited to see it, and I love the fact that Tom has a cameo. I mean, it's a bit shitty that the other Doctors didn't have cameos or some sort of appearances, but where do you draw the line? I don't know. Personally, I think this episode should have started with Night of the Doctor and then go into the titles. I think that would have been a whole lot better. What we get, I think, is a very enjoyable story. I think some of the Time War stuff is a bit of a letdown, if I'm totally honest, because I didn't really ever want to see the Time War. I just wanted to imagine what it'd be like, and when you see, oh, it's just a space war, that's a bit shit. But I love the War Doctor, and I think John Hurt's performance is fantastic. I love the fact that Billie Piper is back, but not as Rose, as a totally different character. That's actually really clever. For what it is, I think it's a very enjoyable story. And then finally, because I don't think I'm missing any, I mean, obviously Doctors have cameoed in other stories, so stuff like Deep Breath, for example, I'm not going to include because that's not really a multi-Doctor story, even though Matt Smith does appear in a Capaldi story. However, Twice Upon a Time. Now, this is probably the worst one for me. If I'm being totally honest, I really don't like Twice Upon a Time. I think there's some nice parallels there in terms of, I like that both Capaldi and Hartnell's Doctor, or at least the first Doctor played by David Bradley, they're both coming to terms with regeneration for different reasons. I really do enjoy that side of it, but this for me is boring. There's no real plot to it, and you could argue that, well, the main plot should be about the two Doctors, and I think they don't really do enough with that to warrant me caring as much as the episode thinks I should. Like, why is Rusty back? Why is Bill back? What are these glass people? Like, they're all just fat that needs to be trimmed. I think the performances are fantastic, and I really like Mark Gatiss as a nice addition in this, but it just doesn't really do anything for me. And I think the unfortunate thing about Twice Upon a Time is it kind of cements that Capaldi was overshadowed at the start and at the end of his eras, because in Deep Breath, like I mentioned, Matt Smith does appear. That should just be about Capaldi. In his last story, you have the first Doctor again, and you think it should just be about Capaldi. It feels like we're taking the spotlight away from him. Some people might disagree, some people might not see that as an issue, but I personally do. I don't like the idea of a Doctor being not necessarily overshadowed, but not all the attention is on him when he should be the main focus of a regeneration story. Like, it should be his story. Plus, do I need to mention about how the first Doctor is portrayed? Do I? I don't even need to say the words. You know how he's been written in this, and it's appalling. Like, there's certain lines of dialogue where I'm like, haha, that's quite funny. There's others where it's like, this doesn't feel like the first Doctor. This feels like a totally different character, and let's just showcase to the audience, wow, look how progressive Doctor Who is now, when in actual fact, Doctor Who's always been pretty fucking progressive. So shitting on the first Doctor to try and emphasise where you're at now is a load of fucking bollocks, if you ask me. So yeah, in terms of the answer to the question, which is my favourite multi-Doctor story, it ain't fucking this one. However, brief summary of all the different stories there. I feel like I've missed one. Have I? I don't know. Someone will probably tell me, like, oh, you forgot this one from 1993 that was actually a secret. Well, actually, that's Dimensions in Time. But anyway, which one is my favourite and why? So, like I said, all these stories, they have positives, they have negatives. Like, they're not perfect. None of them are flawless Doctor Who stories. And I think I'm not against anybody liking any of these stories or any of these being their favourite, apart from Dimensions in Time. For me, I think in terms of a pure Doctor Who story, not like an anniversary one, not like a, hey, let's just sack things off for a week because we're gonna like reference a load of shit. In terms of that, I think maybe the two Doctors. I think in terms of fan servicey stuff, in terms of like, alright, this is never gonna be the strongest script ever, but if you're a Doctor Who fan, there's so much here for you to love. I'd argue Day of the Doctor. And I think especially because I have vivid memories of the build up to that, and I have nostalgia for that coming out. It felt like, for me at least, the last time that I was genuinely so excited to sit down and watch Doctor Who. I've not had that feeling since 2013, and I'm being deadly serious. Like, I've enjoyed stuff after Day of the Doctor. With hindsight, I enjoy Series 8 more, for example, but when they were airing, I really didn't. Day of the Doctor was the last time that I was like, oh my god, I have to see this as it airs because I'm so excited. Fucking hell, 8 years it's been. Jesus. Why do I still talk about this show? But also in terms of a mix of the two, a good story that isn't necessarily overly fan servicey, but it does have that stuff there. Possibly the Three Doctors, and that's the one I'm going to go with. Now, at the start of this video, I didn't think I was going to say that. Genuinely true. I have notes and stuff, but I never actually wrote down which one I'm going to say, yes, this is my favourite one. I think my favourite multi-Doctor story is the Three Doctors because it's not too fan servicey, but it's there. It's not the best story ever, but it's so watchable and it is so fun, and I think that's what you want from a multi-Doctor story, and I don't think you can beat Troughton and Pertwee together. Even in the Five Doctors, when they have their scenes, they are fantastic. I could watch them all day. I could watch several series of the second and third Doctor just travelling around together. It'd be incredible. So yeah, there we go, Three Doctors. I'm sticking with it. In the comments below though, guys, let me know what you think. Which is your favourite out of all the multi-Doctor stories? Whatever it is, let me know down below, and also tell me why. If there's any like nostalgic reason, or you know, just excitement for sitting down and watching it for the first time. Like, whatever it is, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description as always, so if you'd follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But till next time guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye.